I am Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Happy Canada Day to everybody watching from Alberta and the rest of Canada. America just had their birthday and now it's Canada Day.
Well, today's the day that they got off. Canada is July 1st. But first of all, thank you so much for joining us today, even if you did get a holiday. Please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. Also, we try to read most, if not all if not most, I always say wrong, all if not most of your comments live, but we do prioritize super chats. We pause the whole show whenever we get one, as soon as we see it, and read it and interact with it, and they really help us out as well, and we have memberships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into some comments before we get into Alberta Stay Free, and I will say there is a ton of news because as a lot of you may have seen it, if you haven't seen it, we're going to show all the clips today. Doug Ford, as well as Danielle Smith, had a huge press conference trying to announce a pipeline across Canada. We'll get into all the details of that.
Todd says, hey y'all, and says, cute doggy. Thank you. That's essentially a, what do you call it? A stunt double for our dog. Our dog looks exactly the same as that dog that shows up right during our intro. For those of you that watched the whole intro, thank you so much. And also says they ended up going with the iPhone Pro Max 17. So that's a pretty good one. We said you could get one of the cheaper ones, but if that works for you and if that's an upgrade for you and you needed a better phone anyways, I know battery life is way better with those. So that's great. And also says just need a handle case and remote battery and mic now. LOL. And those are also easy to get, Amazon and other tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say maybe you got a deal on it because especially in Canada, if you sign up with a company, they give you a deal on the phone, things like that. I still only use the 13 Pro and it's absolutely fantastic. You won't have to upgrade that for a while because the iterations of improvement now are getting smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. But I will say the zoom on that thing will be fantastic. Yeah. And don't worry about trying other camera apps when you're out and about. Just use the native iPhone one. It works the best. The Kodaks and things like that, when you want to bring it into your computer, is going to make it easiest as well.
But it's funny because how far technology has gone and how easy it is now for people to become citizen journalists or go out there and film or interview people is, I think, what is really putting a fire under a lot of the mainstream media's behinds, I will have to say, because we just started here on YouTube. And in a way, it's great to see when we used to go out and we used to go film or interview people, big protests, we would see these giant cameras, like these giant TV film crews and cameras having to lug everything around with their gigantic tripods, barely being able to hold on to them. I know that's what they're used to and I know that's their job, but it is really interesting to see just other people, content creators, some influencers as well, during those protests and marches, just being able to go out there and run around and do essentially even better journalism than a lot of the mainstream media does.
Well, I'll say that it wasn't always like that because when we first started, iPhones were just kind of coming around, I think. People were really starting to use them for citizen journalism and things like that. When we go to a lot of protests, people would have kind of like our studio cameras. Yeah, they would bring those. We started by bringing those thinking we're going to get better quality image, better audio. But I tell you what, the phone just has so many advantages. Over a couple year period, I seen everybody just starting to leave the big cameras at home and everybody was bringing the iPhones. And the big mainstream media like CTV, CBC that had the big cameras were at a huge disadvantage because they couldn't mobilely go around and get the interviews and get the mobile shots. I think that an iPhone actually helps you get, or any phone really.
Or in some instances having to run away, like when I was helping Billboard Quiz film. But even with the stabilization, it's impossible almost to try to stabilize one of those even smaller cameras now, like the mirrorless ones. It's just so much easier to be with a phone. So I'm glad that you're venturing into citizen journalism because we do need more and more people to be out there recording, interviewing people in a safe, respectful manner and with others around you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So nothing bad happens to you. So
well, and now that you do have an iPhone, I say I resisted an iPhone for so freaking long. I went Android, all my computers. I refused to go. Nat was using it. And finally I broke down and got the phone. I'm like, wow, this is so much more streamlined, especially for video editing and other things. Eventually, I got an iPad, and the iPhone and iPad seamlessly worked together, which really helped with this show and when we're out filming things as well.
And Stephen Jensen says, hi, everyone. Hello, and thank you for being here. Todd says, 2-year contract, $50 a month for the phone, $100 for the plan. Lol, ouch, was already paying $100 a month. Anyway, hardware upgrade, they call it.
Yeah. But man, it
Phone plans
really
are
hurts
crazy
when
in
we were
Canada.
living in Canada too. I remember the phone prices. Because although I lived in Canada for a long time, I also lived in the United States. And when I was older, I moved back to Canada. And I was used to U.S. prices, and U.S. prices are so much cheaper, and Mexican prices are even that much more cheaper.
Yes. And Todd says, I love the camera. Sent you some clips if you have Google Drive emailed. Yes, we got them. Thank you so much. We've been running around all day today, still going around with appointments, etc. But so it's been taking up a whole of our day. But I do want to see them right after we finish the show.
Well, I've already watched them.
Oh, yes.
They were
Yeah,
absolutely
time.
they were absolutely fantastic. It was the big blue, beautiful flag. We were kind of talking about that thing last time. I'm glad to see it's up there in wave, and there was a lot of wind, so it was looking very good. I will say over the next couple of weeks, we may miss a show here or there, but we will post it on our X account, as well as we'll make a notification on YouTube as well, just because I have a lot of different appointments and things like that.
If we're going to miss a show. But just for the probably next couple of 1 or 2 weeks, hopefully. Justin GP says, Nat, Guy, Todd, Steven, everyone. Hello, and thank you for being here. Justin GP. And Todd also says, wow, is it ever smooth, Guy? You're right. I'm loving it, actually. Well, that's great. And I hope you're having fun discovering the new features of the phone to film.
And since you don't have the handle or the little small rig case yet, try to do pans and tilts, and then leave those on your phone. And then when you get the handle and the other thing, try to do the pan and the tilt, and it is even more stable. It's crazy how much that little handle and that case helps you with so many different things.
But a lot of things,
and it's really cheap to buy that case and that handle.
A lot of things people don't realize is sometimes when you're filming or panning and tilting, people usually go with their arms, but you can essentially become your own gimbal if you turn your whole torso, your whole body. It helps stabilize things.
Well, the actual
the
actual trick is when she's talking about your arms, the further your elbow is from your body, the more unstable you're going to be. So if your elbow is connected right to your rib and you hold your phone like this, it becomes extremely stable.
You look funny.
We used to work in the film industry for a little while, so yeah.
And we used to do a lot of real estate photography too with phones, funnily enough.
Yeah.
They wanted us to use phones instead of fancy cameras just because it was so much easier too. Reckon Around says, hello everyone. Hello, and thank you for being here.
Good to see ya.
And Justin GP says, not allowed to miss any shows, no deal. Thank you for being here. And Big Karwandi says, Mark Carney, the great deceiver, like Satan.
Oh,
Almost
absolutely.
looks like
And Doug Ford is really looking to kind of make his move on Pierre Poilievre. We'll see if he's able to do that. I highly doubt it. That being said, he is in Alberta. He is trying to play the cowboy. Poilievre, they're all trying to play like they're Albertan now. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But now let's actually go into Alberta Stay Free.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And let's start with this from Tanya Clemens that says, you don't have to know where you stand in Alberta's future today, but I do think we owe it to ourselves and to the next generation to ask the right questions before deciding. Here are 5 that challenged me.
Yeah, and this was a fantastic little clip. I put some easier clips in before we really get into the meat and potatoes today, because most of what today's episode is going to kind of focus and center around was Danielle Smith's press conference with Doug Ford, as well as a lot of Mark Carney news, all kind of revolving around Alberta, pipelines, natural resources.
Hey, Alberta. I'm not here to tell you what to think today. I'm not even here.
It's the second one. No. The gold?
What? Oh, no. There. I did it.
No, you didn't.
I did it?
Here to convince you of anything. I just want to offer a few honest questions, the same ones I've had to sit with myself. Because sovereignty isn't a slogan, it's a serious idea, and serious ideas deserve serious thought. So here are 5 questions I think every Albertan should ask themselves. Number 1, is Alberta better off today than it was 10 or 20 years ago? Not just emotionally, but financially, economically, and in terms of opportunity. Are families getting ahead? Are young people confident they can build a future here? If the answer feels uncomfortable, that's worth paying attention to. Number 2, who should ultimately decide Alberta's future? Ottawa or Albertans? Because no matter where you land on sovereignty, that question sits underneath all of it. Who do we believe should have the final say?
Yeah, and I think that is the important question. Who should have the say over the future of Alberta? And with the federalization of natural resources and the federalization of Canada in a lot of different ways, especially with Mark Carney having a majority government, we now need a premier that's not going to hook us closer to Canada, but really demand sovereignty for Alberta. And that's not happening. Danielle Smith is selling Alberta up the river, especially with today's announcement.
Over our resources, our economy, and our priorities. Third, if Alberta consistently contributes more than it receives, how long is that sustainable? That's not a complaint, it's a math question. At what point do we ask whether the system we're in actually works for the people who live and work here? Number 4, what happens if we do nothing? If we don't ask hard questions? If we don't explore alternatives? If we just assume things will somehow correct themselves? Because standing still is still a choice, and it has consequences too. And 5, what kind of Alberta do we want to leave behind? For our kids, for our grandkids, for the people who will farm this land, run businesses, and raise families long after we're gone? Do we want to leave an Alberta that's more dependent or more self-determined? You don't have to have all the answers today. You don't even have to agree with me. But I do think Alberta...
And I'll say one of the other things, it's like, yeah, how long are we going to keep giving these massive remittance payments to federal Canada so they can dish out to the rest of the provinces? And it looks like Mark Carney is starting to delve into natural resources through federalization and making sure he builds the mechanisms of control over the provinces that he even allows to go into these sectors. That being said, what is he going to constantly take all the money from you and then leave you high and dry if natural resources run out or they want to go against natural resources again one day? The infrastructure needs to be built in Alberta, not the rest of Canada. Is he going to strip Alberta dry and then is he going to move to BC, do the same thing, and then Saskatchewan? He wants to do maybe one province at a time, so he makes sure he maximizes the amount of remittance payments.
But what I also find interesting is from watching John talking to Albertans and people going out there, like maybe Todd will very soon, and talking to people on the ground that are against Alberta becoming independent, it's very clear that they haven't even posed these questions to themselves or even asked why some people might want to leave. And I think in a lot of ways they're living in these rose-colored bubble where they live in the suburbs, they don't have to deal with what's actually going on in the ground in the bigger cities, for example, and they just watch mainstream news once or twice a week. So they're not fully aware of what is actually already going on around them, but they want to defend what they think they still live in.
Well, we also really need to educate ourselves and the people that are going to go out and talk to the people that are on the fence or on the other side, because they're going to start throwing these pipelines in our face, these natural resource contracts, like Mark Carney's actually doing something, but he's stripping sovereignty away from the provinces. And a lot of non-politically engaged people will have some really dumbed down talking points and not understand what's really going on in Canada here.
And next, let's go to United Alberta Flags. It said, we are on Facebook now as well. Check us out to see where the United Alberta Flags Independence Float has been. One of the many events last week was at the Ponoka Stampede.
Absolutely fantastic. And I think they're going to be taking that thing around. So it'll be fantastic if they do.
Yes, that too. And next, let's go to, I think, one of your favorite people. Let's go to Ambassador Hoekstra that says, quote, no, we're not meeting with the separatists and strategizing this at all. No, this is from CBC Watcher. And the question says, no, $50 billion credit facility. They've said that was the case. The American government has had conversations with them about that. Is that not true? And he's like, no, not that I know of.
Yeah, and I would say this, the United States already approved the pipelines going directly from Alberta to the United States to cut out the rest of Canada, so Canada wouldn't have a lot of mechanisms of control over Alberta. We've seen in the past how these pipelines turn out. The federal government will approve them, they'll start building them to the West Coast, they'll put a halt on it halfway, have First Nations and other groups come in there to renegotiate and put more mechanisms of control over the pipeline and re-go over the details. I mean, you already have a good trading partner in the United States, build a pipeline to the United States. It's going to be the shortest pipeline to build, the least amount of partners, and it has been a long-term trading partner that you can trust. There's no reason not to build to the United States, especially because you can cut the federal government and other provinces out of it, and it gives Alberta a lot of leverage when it goes into other kinds of negotiations. You can still go into negotiations for the 2 other pipelines if that's what they want to do. But I will say there's going to be a lot of strings attached, and it looks like there's retroactive taxes being put through these MOUs on these Canadian pipelines.
I'd like to stick on that. In 1995, the Clinton administration was very clear. They wanted Quebec to stay in Canada. Do you want Alberta to stay part of Canada?
That's the president's call. I think at this point in time, we've made it very clear we are not going to take a position on that. That's a decision that is to be made by the people of Alberta, the province of Alberta, and the federal government. That's a discussion between those entities. It's not a discussion that the American government is going to get involved with.
There's a small section of Alberta separatists, it is small, but who would like to join the United States. Is that something the Trump administration would like to see?
This is a decision that's going to be made by those 3 entities involved in this process: the people of Alberta, the province, and the federal government. That's it. I don't anticipate you're going to see the United States get involved. I'm not going to get a directive, I don't believe, from the President of the United States, from our.
And we'll continue to watch this whole clip because I think it's really important and it gives a little bit of insight. But they want to avoid any foreign interference because ultimately the UCP, even if we have a binding referendum, even if we win by 60 or 75% or whatever made up number we're going to have to make that Danielle Smith is trying to give out right now. Even if we hit that, the UCP can say, no, we're not going to do that. Or the federal government can say, oh, no, you have foreign interference. So I actually like this position from the United States because it takes out the idea of foreign interference. Also, Alberta Independence has been really careful when it takes money. It's taking money from Canadians. It's making sure it doesn't take money from anybody that is outside of the country because we want to avoid this big, not only talking point, but mechanism of attack from the federal government of foreign interference.
Well, once again, we see the mainstream news trying to make a moot point, which is moot at this point, essentially.
Well, it's not. It's absolutely not.
But wanting to amplify it.
Yeah, it's absolutely not mute. Foreign interference is going to be one of the main mechanisms of attack later on if we're able to get through a non-binding referendum and then a binding referendum. A way to shut it down is to claim that there was foreign interference and then declare the Emergencies Act as well. So they're already trying to claim foreign interference through a lot of donations and things like that, but everybody's kept their receipts. We know in Alberta Independence we had to be very careful with this, and I think the United States is understanding as well. They need to mind their P's and Q's, otherwise that could unravel the entire thing.
Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, that says, Pete, go out there and do what you can to advocate for secession or for the people of Alberta to vote to stay in as part of the Confederation. That's not your job. I'm working on the 3 things that the President told me to work on. What can we do to increase the prosperity of the United States? What can we do to protect and increase the safety of the American people and the security of America?
So not going to get involved. The separatists have argued that you have kind of got involved. They've said that there have been meetings between administration officials and them. Can you confirm that that has happened?
Separatists can say whatever they want.
But did that happen?
I don't know. As far as I know, in our dialogue with the State Department, number one, we meet with all kinds of different groups, okay? I'm sure that, as you do your research sometime, we're doing a party this afternoon, okay, that may have close to 3,000 people. We're somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 people. Okay, might there be a separatist person there or a separatist couple? It's possible, okay? I'm going to the Stampede on Sunday. I will be there for 3 days, okay?
But that's different than having a meeting at the State Department. And they haven't met with you? You haven't met with anyone?
I've not met with the separatists.
And I will say this, it's important that he brought that up about maybe a picture surfacing because that could be a mechanism of attack, especially if the federal government has any plants claiming to be separatists, that they want to get in with a picture with foreign officials that they can then claim, again, foreign interference. This is going to become a major mechanism of attack if the Federalists lose either one or both of these votes.
Separatists, okay, but does that mean that, on Thursday, after I leave Calgary and having been there for 3 days, will it be possible for you to find a picture with me with 2 separatists? And I will say the answer is yes.
But that's not
well,
the
I know
point
that. No, we're not meeting with the separatists and strategizing this at all. No.
So no $50 billion credit facility. They've said that was the case. That the American government has had conversations with them about that. That's not true.
Not that I know of. No.
Okay.
No.
And it was a lot of banking officials and things like that some of the independence movement was kind of going to meet with to strategize if we did get independence, to make a long-term game plan, which I think is very important.
And next is getting into what you were talking at the beginning.
Before we get into it, this is a different clip. You can bring that up. This is a clip we played the other day, but I just want to replay this clip because this is absolutely fantastic. Her past is coming back to haunt her now. She's moving in bed with a communist federal government that wants to federalize natural resources, take sovereignty away from provinces, and put mechanisms of control over each of those provinces, not just from the federal government, but through each individual province itself, through First Nations, and through other different specialty groups and classes. But we want to play this before we get into today's press conference that she did have.
So as Jerry's saying, Danielle Smith saying, any pipeline built with government money is a failure, and thus Canada is broken and does not work for Alberta. She said it herself, and now she should resign as a result of her failure.
Well, again, any pipeline built with government money is a failure, from Danielle Smith's own mouth. And it's even worse than that, because this is government money and mechanisms that the federal government now seems to fully be leaning into natural resources. And how would you fund a hard turn away from the Americans and into a communist state? Through natural resources. That's the only real revenue they can bring in to fund this thing.
Having to build another pipeline with government money as being a success, it would be, I think, a failure of the exercise. The exercise we're going through right now is how do we restore investor confidence so that the private sector will have confidence in investing in Canada again, and that includes pipelines. That's what I'm aiming for. Having to build
Again, and now we have the announcements of potentially two pipelines, one going west, one going east, both looking to be primarily built with government money. Government money means government control, government power. They have control over the legislation. They can change legislation to fill those pipelines or these natural resource sectors, not with union workers, but with mass migration and things like that. It's going to benefit the citizens less and less the more government involvement there is in these things.
And now we're finding ways to try to explain it away, essentially, as they announce it. But I know. Let's start with Rebel News saying, quote, I wasn't campaigning, but I love the people of Alberta, says Ontario Premier Doug Ford, denying speculation that he's looking to become the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Of course, in response to a question from Rebel News.
Yeah, and this wasn't the main news of the day. We're going to get into the clips that was the main news, but it's all coming kind of out of this press conference. But Doug Ford is definitely looking to position himself to take out Pierre Poilievre through a vote of non-confidence or some other way. And Mark Carney is definitely working with him. Doug Ford's position isn't too good in Ottawa, and we'll see if his numbers go up or down after today's announcement. I actually would expect them to go slightly up. That being said, he's made a series of mistakes over the last year where in the next election, I don't know if he will even be reelected. And if that's the case, and say a Liberal or somebody, even worst case scenario, from the NDP is now the new leader of Ottawa, do you think they're going to continue on with this pipeline?
And again, this is nothing new. We've been saying this for months, almost a year now, about Pierre Poilievre.
We saw pictures of you campaigning at the Calgary Stampede. Are you trying to shore up support to challenge Pierre Poilievre for the next Conservative Party leader?
Can I borrow that line, that neutral question? I'm going to use it with the Toronto media. This is like a church picnic compared to the Toronto media. But anyways, I wasn't campaigning. People asked for pictures, so I took pictures. There were a lot of pictures, I'll tell you that. But I love the people of Alberta. We share the same values. And we just have a great relationship with the Premier and the folks here in Alberta. I love it here, actually.
We share the same values, my ass, Doug Ford. You are a liberal and conservative clothing 100%. Him and Danielle Smith were extremely buddy-buddy, and you can understand why. He wants to get rid of Pierre Poilievre. Danielle Smith understands if they get rid of Pierre Poilievre, and it looks like Doug Ford is going to be the one to make the move, possibly in conjunction with Jason Kenney, in order to replace him with either Doug Ford or Jason Kenney. Nobody's going to really accept that in the long term, so it's going to be easy for her to then oust either Jason Kenney or Doug Ford after that. It's a very hard move to try to oust Pierre Poilievre. This has been a long-term plan coming out of Doug Ford as well as his campaign strategist.
But now let's go back into your comments, and then we'll actually get into the pipeline news. I thought it was in this first segment, but no, it's in the next one. Todd says, I just changed the frame rate on his new iPhone, and she is super stable. 420 frames per second is beautiful. because his phone can't do that. Ours can't do that, but yours can.
I would. It depends what you want to do. Usually 60 frames a second is pretty good, especially if you want to slow it down just a little bit. If you do 420 frames a second, it's going to eat up a lot of data. The files are going to get really big, especially when you go into editing. If you're doing a talking head or something like this, usually 30 frames a second is what you're doing, so you can kind of get a little bit of motion blur. But 60 frames a second is usually best, is what I use on an iPhone. Unless you're intentionally going to do super slow mode. But for most of the stuff that people are going to do in Alberta Independence, 30 or 60 frames a second is best. It keeps the files smaller, and I'll leave it there for now, but you can get much more complex with what frame rates do and stuff like that as well.
And yeah, the guy is a lot more on the camera side and production and lighting and microphones and everything. And I do, if anybody has editing questions or about DaVinci Resolve, I can also answer those. I don't edit on anything else. So if it's about... What's the other one? The Adobe one called? I hate
Premiere Pro.
Premiere Pro, and then Final Cut. All the other ones I don't know about. Todd says, we don't need a pipeline to Ontario. It's northern BC, folks. International markets, or are going to hit all the tankers in the St. Lawrence.
Yeah, we're going to go into it because the next section is Alberta Politics, and it's nothing but clips, and we're going to go in depth on what they're doing. They're going to connect Alberta to every single province across Canada almost in order to get this pipeline into Ottawa and Alberta. And the thing here is, what's going to happen? You're going to approve this pipeline. It's going to be hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions, because the government's involved. There's always more cost involved when the government gets embedded with these natural resource projects. And what's going to happen? He's going to approve it. They're going to start building the pipeline. They can't do that because a vote for Alberta to be independent would actually sabotage all that money and all that time they're going into that. So I would expect maybe they're going to get shovels in the ground just before the binding referendum, if the binding referendum takes place October 2027, just to say, oh, we got things going now. It's actually a reality. But they're not going to have this thing go at absolute warp speed in case Alberta independence takes over, because then Alberta has all the control over the rest of Canada at that point.
And Stephen Jensen says, for 20, you only need 60 max. You'll end up with huge file sizes otherwise. And that's the thing. I mean, if you know where you're going to store them and where you can put them, sure, it's fun to film at that high of a frame rate. But in general, you'll run out of storage real quick.
And I usually always recommend 30 for if you're doing talking heads like this. But if you're out at a protest, I always recommend 60 frames a second, because very often something crazy will happen. Maybe a fight will happen. Maybe somebody will pull somebody out of their pocket in the background or something. And you want to be able to slow the footage down at least a little bit to actually see what's kind of going on there. So 60 frames a second allows you to not really miss anything at a protest or in an action environment.
And Todd says a pipeline to Ontario is another step towards nationalization of our resources.
Absolutely. And let's, I know I always talk about nationalization. I've been talking about this for probably about a year now. That being said, let's just call it what it is. It's actually communism. If we keep calling it federalization, they're going to pitch federalization as a good thing. And that's exactly what they're trying to do now. Danielle Smith, Doug Ford, Mark Carney, they're all trying to pitch federalization as a good thing. This is how Canada stands together. This is how we make money together. Well, no, this is how you take sovereignty and make sure independence can never happen. And this is how you make sure all the provinces are connected together and the federal government has ultimate control over each of those provinces. He's building the mechanisms to move towards communism, and he's going to fund his communist dreams through natural resources ultimately, and the federalization of those. But the federalization, I feel, is just too nice of a term, and they're going to be able to kind of pitch that in a dishonest way overall.
And Todd asks, I like 420, Stephen, because Stephen said that's a huge file size. But if you say it'll screw my file size, I'll believe you. Save it for short clips then. Yes, or if you want to add a specific effect, or if you're transferring it to a computer or another file storage device where you can actually edit off of and use it for specific edits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or uploading it to either YouTube or whatever social media you're going to upload it to, and then delete the big file to make space.
Yeah, there was something else I was going to say there, though, as well. Oh, I can't remember, but
I'm not in your brain yet. As of yet, I'm not in your brain. Todd says, my dad's a business owner. Even though his business is successful, he's been fighting the government the whole time to try and hang on to his money and has had to work himself ragged to get where he's at. Yes, and says lots of work and busy, but good luck hanging on to your own hard earnings.
yeah, but a lot of people are waking up. I understand people that have been in Canada and have sit businesses, they're going to have a tough time. But over 50% of new businesses actually register in the States to avoid the Canadian government taxes and a lot of other things that are going to come up. When businesses start, they're usually not successful. But after a few years, if they get successful, they don't want to be trapped in that Canadian system.
Yes, sorry. I was trying to figure out some of the messages.
Oh, that's what I was going to say about the 30 frames, 60 frames. Also, don't film in anything higher than 4K. I'm not sure if the new iPhone has that, but anything higher than 4K is going to really make the file sizes extremely large.
Yes, Stephen Jensen says, back in the days of film, they only used 30 frames per second. 4K at 60 frames is 16 gigabytes of file per hour. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason you would film
and Steven also says 1080p is fine for any YouTubing. That's all they allow. They allow 8 and 4 eventually, but it just makes no sense. Takes forever to upload, and nobody really cares about that high definition yet.
Well, and your rendering and everything, it just absolutely eats up time. And I'm not going to go too in depth today about it. Maybe we can talk in the future if you do have questions. 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second is used so you can get a little bit of motion blur, so it looks more natural and it doesn't look, I would say, so sharp and so much like that. 60 frames, you kind of get that a little bit more. That being said, 60 frames is best when you're doing protests and things like that in case something actually happens you're not expecting.
Right now we're on 30?
Right now, yeah, we always use 30 for
I like
talking
24
heads.
more. When I used to film for myself, I like 24 more because it looks more cinematic and stuff, but it also feels sometimes too slow or too cinematic.
Yeah, but it gets more complex at that point because then it comes into shutter speed and things like that. I don't want to go too much into it today.
Yes. And hold on, because there's a message. I'll read yours, Justin GP, but because you're answering to somebody else, I have to read that one first. Rockin' Around says, I just wanted to thank you guys and all the work you put into these live streams and a few future soonish videos as well. I'm working on them, but again, we've been kind of hammered with other stuff we had to take care of.
Yeah, we've had a lot of personal business come up and a lot of different mandatory appointments we're having to go to. So if we do miss a few episodes here or there, it's definitely not intentional. We're going to try our best instead of missing an episode, maybe having the episode earlier or maybe having to push it back on that day. We're also trying to come up with more edited videos, but I think over the next couple of weeks, we have to prioritize some of this personal business.
Yeah, and the lives as well, as much as we can. Philip Vespa says, can't believe some conservatives take the president for granted. He's fighting tooth and nail for America because he loves his people. Making deals is what he does. Hope Balogun scores tonight. I am, again, as many of you know, I cheer for Mexico. I am from Mexico. We got disqualified. It's fine. We died standing. What's the phrase? We died.
Mexico's out of the World Cup.
No, but we died standing up. No. What's that phrase?
Let's just keep it going.
Okay, we're out, but now the U.S. is today, so we'll see how it does against Belgium. I think the U.S. is going to win. Belgium isn't that good. But on the whole Balogun thing, what do you think about the Trump reversing the red card? Because I told you about it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Whatever. I'm not a big soccer fan like Nat is over here, though, but...
We already know FIFA is incredibly corrupt, so...
The only game I fully watched from beginning to end was the Mexico game that happened yesterday where they got kicked out.
He was screaming at the TV.
I may watch the U.S. game, and then I'll obviously watch the final, but I was not a soccer fan before last night. Now maybe a little bit.
And I do agree. You were saying that they should have attacked more. The Mexican team should have attacked more in the last 20 minutes, especially because the other team, England, was a man down. And yet we just stood around there trying to do the same play over and over again, thinking it was going to work.
Well, I used to teach...
With the tallest defenders ever.
I used to teach MMA. I used to do a lot of personal training, but I used to also play a lot of different sports, like for fun, a variety. But I used to watch a lot of sports because I worked in a sports bar. Never really watched soccer in depth. Within 10 minutes, I could tell exactly what they needed to do. Anytime one of the teams would kind of do what I was saying to do, they were scoring or they would have the best opportunities. You don't allow the team to get set. You cause chaos by really pressing the plays before anybody's set. And we've seen that's exactly, England was really good at defending when they had a chance to set because their guys were like giants. They looked like basketball players compared to the Mexicans.
Yes, as the phrase says here in Mexico, we played we played as we've never had and we lose like we always have. So. But moving on, Lori P says, Justin GP are telling Justin GP, my son moved there to Grand Prairie. He is a welder. He's telling me that there is not many people that support independence. I have been trying to tell him that is not so. What is the vibe in Grand Prairie? And Justin GP responded, because I'm interested in this conversation, says, there are many that support it, but it's hard to judge the vibe. Depends on where he's welding, etc. Hopefully he's having conversations to help people understand that is a great way to send a message. That it's a great way to send a message. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure how much people within the natural resource sector, because a lot of them are just not politically engaged at this point with these announcements of pipelines. Maybe they'll just think, oh, it's work, who cares? But in the long run, the people that are politically engaged are going to realize Mark Carney's absolutely stripping the sovereignty away from provinces with these natural resource deals. Number one, not just of Alberta, but any province this pipeline goes through, Carney's going to have an absolute ton of control over it.
And Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, says, and thank you, that is a quote that I was trying to say that I could not remember. Says, better to die on your feet than walk on your knees. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. And also, thank you so much for the other super chat. $5 super chat says, why were you able to read and listen to my proposed Declaration of Independence? Any improvement suggestions?
Yeah, I actually listened to it. It was fantastic. That was even better than the original song that we played on the show. Even though the audio messed up on your original song that we played, it was absolutely fantastic. We're going to play that hopefully later this week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Again, I have another big appointment either tomorrow or the next day. So when I have time, I'm going to make sure I insert it into the show. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And my only recommendation was it focused heavy on economics, which I liked because a big portion of people are going to be swayed by economics, but maybe even making another one that focuses on same voice, same kind of beat, same everything you did there, but focusing on the cultural issues, having two different versions, I think can appeal to two different people. It was fantastic though. I was very impressed by that. I almost forgot about that because I listened to it either yesterday or the day before, whenever you originally sent it. And it slipped my mind because we just had a lot of important business happening in the last few days.
Yes, and I've been dealing with the important business mostly. So I'll listen to it also tonight. I'll go over the emails again tonight. Reckon Around says, and then we'll go ahead into Alberta Politics, says the silent majority in Alberta are in favor of independence but will not sign a petition or do a rally because they know what happened to the truckers. They will vote to get out. And again, I hope so, but we have to keep that idea in their heads and not let the other side kind of seep through and say, no, look at how good you have it now. Because you don't.
And we really, really need to get a new premier in there, one that's going to insert their sovereignty over Alberta and take Alberta's sovereignty back. Start putting in policies like taking the money back from the Canadian pension plan and putting it in Alberta and banks. All that takes is a phone call. The Canadian government isn't going to allow that to happen, so they're going to take some kind of legal action. And doing other policies like that demask the federal government after the first binding referendum and before, or after the first non-binding referendum and before the second binding referendum. We need to educate people in real time. The best way to do that is to have a premier that will actually try to take Alberta's sovereignty back. Even if it doesn't work, it will make the federal government take the opposite position. It will educate the people of Alberta in absolute real time. Danielle Smith, every interview she says, well, I'm not going to take the money back for the pension plan because ultimately I don't think we're going to be able to, and we'll lose that fight. And then when they ask her about another sovereignty policy, she said, well, we won't win that fight either, so I'm not going to die on that bridge. So I'm just going to do this one over here or this one over here. We need somebody that's going to take hard policies and really pick fights that they're going to lose to unmask the federal government. And that's how we get an independent marketing campaign that costs very little money. Have a premier that will implement sovereignist policies.
And can also help explain why independence and sovereignty is so important, not just independent, sovereign Alberta within a United Canada, but an actually sovereign Alberta.
Yeah, right now it is not looking good because Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, Doug Ford, Mark Carney are all standing together with all these natural resource deal, and they're selling federalization like it's an absolute fantastic thing. And to anybody that's politically engaged, they can see right through it. But the non-politically engaged, which is the majority of the voters, aren't going to see through it. What I'm hoping is the non-politically engaged don't show up on the day of the Alberta independence vote, because it's not a big voting day, because it's not a provincial election or a federal election.
And speaking of all of that, let's now go to Alberta politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And let's start with what we were talking about. CBC Watcher says, quotes Smith saying, after signing an agreement last year to work together with Alberta and Saskatchewan to build new pipelines through an economic corridor from Alberta to Ontario, the government of Ontario is here today to unveil a potential route for the new 3,300-kilometer oil pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Sarnia, Ontario.
Every single politician in Canada right now seems to think they're Albertan. Everyone's wearing a cowboy hat. Everyone's saying, the Albertans' values are my values. Doug Ford just said that. We just showed the clip. That's not the case at all. Mark Carney is a globalist. He has no interest in Albertans getting their sovereignty. They're all wearing cowboy hats. They're all claiming Alberta first.
And they also stole this from the Shield of the Americas, because now it's going to be known as the Northern Shield Energy Corridor. How original.
But I have also said many times that Alberta's aim is to double our oil production in the next 10 to 15 years and to diversify our export markets. And that means not only reaching global customers, but ensuring Canadians can benefit from our resources here at home. All Canadians deserve a
all Canadians. This is not going to benefit Albertans like people think, like they're going to sell it. Most of these jobs I'm going to believe are going to go to mass immigration, and they're going to come right into the country and be delivered right into these jobs, or they're going to be fast-tracked from PR right into citizenship and take the majority of these jobs. Now, some of the jobs can't be taken, like the Red Seal jobs and things like that, or if you need a technical certificate, but a ton of jobs don't need that. And it's not going to benefit the citizens like it normally would if the Albertan government was completely controlling this, and we didn't sign a lot of these MOUs that are going to sign a lot of the rights away and things like that.
And it's once again Alberta not being able to manage its own resources for itself. It has to be for all Canadians. All Canadians are going to benefit, not Albertans, all Canada.
And again, they can't go at warp speed on any of these pipelines, because if Alberta ever pulls out of Canada, and after that binding referendum, that gives Alberta all the control over all of Canada. And Mark Carney just can't risk that. So I don't expect shovels in the ground into just before the actual binding referendum. He's not going to have anything go at warp speed before a non-binding referendum, that's for sure.
Stable, secure, and reliable energy supply. Alberta is ready to provide that stability and be the heart of a more energy sovereign and economically resilient Canada. And that vision is already taking shape as we work to make up for a lost decade of anti-energy policies from the previous federal administration in Ottawa. After signing an agreement last year to work together with Alberta and Saskatchewan to build new pipelines through an economic corridor from Alberta to Ontario, the government of Alberta...
Go down. I think there's a picture of this pipeline.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to go back into what she's saying, because this is probably the most important news probably of the next few months. But as you can see, it starts in Alberta, goes through Saskatchewan, goes through Manitoba. I mean, it goes all the way across Canada. Look at all these different mechanisms of control through each province, through the First Nations, through each of these provinces. The federal government also gets a ton of control of a lot of this as well. A lot of money is going to be dished out to the from this pipeline to the federal government, and then dished out to all these specialty groups. So the federal government ultimately gets control over all these specialty groups and provinces as well. And like a simple pipeline going to the United States would cut out a ton of specialty groups, players, and classes.
But again, and
it would cut out the federal government.
And also the gaslighting coming from even Danielle Smith saying, from the previous government, it's the same government, except now they have a majority, which is even worse. Because a lot of the proposals coming for the whole green energy, green policy stuff were from Mark Carney when he was also working in conjunction with the Trudeau government.
And like I said, between now and the binding referendum, which hopefully happens in October of 2027, they're not going to start building a lot of this pipeline because it's a huge risk for Mark Carney. And then after that vote, if they manage to stop Alberta from leaving Canada, he has the opportunity to completely pull out of one or both of these deals. With the United States, they're a stable partner that's not going to pull out of this because their direction is full-fledged ahead with energy. Even if a Democrat gets in there, they're going to be invested in AI and they're going to need energy for that. So I would rather go to a partner that is 100% legitimate, 100% stable, that you know is not going to pull out of the deal. Another thing here, the federal government we'll kind of leave it there for now.
Ontario is here today to unveil a potential route for a new 3,300-kilometer oil pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Sarnia, Ontario. Known as the Northern Shield Energy Corridor, this project would pave the way for Alberta's barrier-free access to domestic refineries and markets in eastern Canada. A new east-west pipeline would move an additional 500,000 barrels of Alberta oil per day, with the potential for a future expansion of up to 800,000 barrels per day. Energy security is essential for all countries, as we all know, and this new corridor will include the concept of a strategic petroleum reserve, or SPR, that will store vital Alberta oil reserves in the sun.
Go down to the map again. Okay, it starts in Alberta there, but where does it go out and where is it going to dump into the ships? Wait, how many years is that going to take to build? How much regulation? How many roadblocks are going to be? How many renegotiations? That's a freaking 10-year project, especially at the pace that Canada moves. Now, in the States, they could build that extremely quick. And if we build directly from Alberta into the States is going to build their half of the pipeline, and they're going to build it at breakneck speed because they don't have the same kind of regulations. Even the much shorter pipeline going to the West Coast is going to take a very long time because you're dealing with now the federal government of Canada. They're the ones putting the money up, not the private industry here.
And so to remember what we also discovered after that MOU signing, that a lot of the restrictions and not taxes, regulations are retroactive on the other pipelines that already exist.
Sarnia refinery area to ensure key refined products like diesel, jet fuel, and gasoline are uninterrupted. There is also an opportunity to eventually use this corridor to reach the Atlantic Ocean, which would allow Alberta to provide reliable energy to our nation's European allies. This project will make Canada stronger. By connecting Alberta's energy with Canadian refineries and European markets, we can create jobs, grow our economy, and make the most out of the world-class resources that we've been blessed with. Now that a potential route has been...
How does he feel like a future seer? Because we were just talking about how they're going to want to start using Canada's natural resources to start supporting Europe because Europe has completely self-imploded and immolated into a point where they can't find any energy, and they don't have any energy anymore because they got rid of it all.
Well, it's not even about energy. I've talked about this multiple times now. The only way that communism works in one of the few countries they could actually try to push this communist ideology in is Canada, because it's so progressively liberal and it's going to continue to vote that way. The problem here is the only way to finance this would be through Canadian natural resources. That's why they want to build the pipeline to the East Coast, which is 10 times longer than even to the West Coast. And they're moving closer and closer and closer to Europe. A lot of this money is going to go into federal coffers and then EU coffers, I'm willing to bet, and globalist coffers. It's going to be very interesting what's actually happening here. I believe there's a new game plan to not only wait Donald Trump out, but to fund this globalist ideology. And it's all through Canada and Canada's natural resources. And I've been saying this for quite a while.
And identified, the government of Ontario is commencing work to estimate costs and examine commercial models and related development opportunities for the energy corridor. This pipeline is another signal to investors that Canada is once again open for business and the best country on earth from which to secure a reliable source of energy. We have so much to celebrate with this, and this the announcement from
Canada is not open for business. The size of that pipeline is going to take over a decade. Canada may be open for business in about a decade. Europe is marching headfirst into war here. Will there even be a reasonable partner to trade through that pipeline? Or it would have been far easier just to build that shorter pipeline to the United States. The West Coast pipeline as well is a much better decision. The problem with that one is Mark Carney chose the shallow water port. Why? Because he wants to be the main pipeline to be the one to the East Coast. Why? Because that gives Ottawa and the Laurentian elites and Quebec all the power.
From last week regarding the West Coast pipeline as well. And our government is supporting producers with added incentives to ensure adequate supplies of oil going west and east for this vital proposed project. In the space of about a year, look at how Canada's public opinion has changed. It's done a 180 on energy. In a poll this week, almost 70% of Ontario residents support new or expanded pipelines, and Alberta is here to support the needs of Ontario.
This has nothing to do, I mean, in the Federalist eyes, this has everything to do with a pipeline. We're going to sell natural resources. We're going to sell a pipeline. This has everything to do with communism. This is how the entire game is going to be financed. You let them get away with this, you're going to see your freedom of speech be stripped, which they're already doing. This is the mechanism which they pay for everything. And this is the way they wait out Donald Trump as well, or at least they believe that.
And it's also a way to tell all the Alberta independence people, we're already giving you your giant pipelines and we're already building, an energy corridor. Why are you complaining? Why do you want to leave? We're investing in Canada.
Because you're doing it at the price of Albertans' freedoms, at the price of Saskatchewan's freedoms, BC's freedoms. You're taking our natural resources and you're taking our freedoms with it. And I say no to that. And I hope the general public wakes up before it's too late. They're trying to sell this as a pipe dream, literally.
And all of Canada, with energy in support of a stronger economy, job growth, and prosperity for decades to come. Pipelines have gone from impossible to a national imperative. The Alberta's oil sands have gone from a target to a national treasure. And we're launching the greatest expansion of oil and gas infrastructure and production in decades.
Because now it's a convenient mechanism to trap everybody and to, again, further the communism
and you can
within the country.
Leave that there. We're going to have a lot more clips from this press conference because this is the big news. And there was a ton of clips coming out of this thing because it wasn't just Danielle Smith. It was also Doug Ford. But think about all the resistance they got just on that BC pipeline. Every province here, this is going to take forever to build. And again, this is just a proposal. I'd be very shocked if the East Coast Pipeline makes it past the proposal stage. Also, that's going to be a major threat to the United States. I think that the United States is going to take that as a major threat, building a internal pipeline directly to the East Coast, cutting out the U.S.
But now let's watch something even grosser, I would say, at least in the immediate.
This is bad.
And I don't want his pants to fall down. Premiers Smith and Ford swapped belt buckles, which includes Doug Ford taking off his belt during the press conference. Well, we know whose pants he wants to get into.
But thank you for that question. Now,
Carney.
Since it's a tradition, I have a new Ford Nation belt. I'm not going to whip it off right here, but I am going to give you the new Ford Nation buckle.
Oh!
There you go. Fabulous.
That's so amazing.
There you go.
I don't have the ability to put mine on.
No, but it looks good. Keeping up the tradition.
Thank you.
Not swinging around like that or anything.
Well, and I understood that he was looking around for his Alberta belt buckle everywhere, trying to find it, and so I got him a replacement. So he always has a backup.
Thank you. I love that.
And I don't want his pants to fall down, so now he's got a belt buckle to hold him up.
Okay, you leave it there, and you see best friends with EB, buying them cowboy boots, changing buckles with Doug Ford. Danielle Smith is a smart political player, and people will say, well, no, she actually likes Pierre Poilievre. She understands her political future would catapult if Doug Ford is able to oust Pierre Poilievre, and he's currently trying to plot that move. He's been plotting it for months now, along with his campaign coordinator. Doug Ford would love to have a vote of confidence at some point on Pierre Poilievre, and I believe he's setting up that for a long-term strategy. Danielle Smith understands that's best for her because nobody's going to accept Doug Ford as the official opposition, at least not conservatives, and Jason Kenney they're not going to accept either. It will be easy for her to oust a Kenney or a Doug Ford later on if Doug Ford ousts Pierre Poilievre for her.
And lastly,
because Doug Ford will be absolutely hated if he's able to actually pull off the ousting of Pierre Poilievre. Mm-hmm. And then Danielle Smith can kind of come in as the hero, ousting Doug Ford.
And the hero that was able to keep Alberta within a united Canada
and save Canada through giving away its sovereignty and every other province's sovereignty away.
But now, as I was saying, let's just hear it from them actually saying it out loud. What we've been saying and proposing would happen now. It's literally happening, or they're trying to say that it's going to be happening. Juno News reporter asks, who is going to pay for this project? Are you thinking private or public? Ford saying, we'll look at both. That's why we're doing the feasibility study. And the reporter is asking, you're open to being paid by taxpayer dollars because communist regimes cannot survive without the money of everybody else. And Ford says it's going to be an incredible project. So essentially, yes.
They're going to fund it through the federal government. They set the precedent
through you.
With the West Coast pipeline, and you're going to see all natural resource projects in the future. A large majority stakeholder control is going to lie with the federal government, and they control all the laws, legislations, and regulations as well. And they absolutely love carbon taxes because carbon taxes ups the price of a barrel of oil, but no other company is going to invest in Canada with that kind of mechanism there. So it leaves the Canadian government, number one, is the only investor, but number two, paying a carbon tax to who? Itself. So they can say to the public, oh, no, there are no extra revenues because the carbon tax, we're actually operating the pipeline at a loss, but they're still funneling money to themselves through the carbon tax and these other carbon mechanisms.
I mean, who are you planning, and this is probably for Premier Ford when he gets his breath back, who are you planning is going to pay for this multi-billion-dollar project? Are you thinking private? Are you thinking public? Do you have any companies in mind?
Well, we'll look at both. That's why we're doing the feasibility study. We'll reach out to the private sector, but we won't hesitate to do what the government of Canada and Alberta's doing. So let's take a look at all options, and once we have an answer, and we'll have this done by the end of the year, then we'll be able to give you a straighter answer.
So you're open, sorry, Premier Smith, sorry.
I'll just say the thing to remember about pipelines is they're an excellent investment. That's why we have underwritten pipeline purchases and an equity stake for First Nations, because they are revenue generating projects. And so ultimately who pays for them is the people who use them, the shippers. They pay through tolls. And we've already seen that with the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Yeah, the federal government did front the money, but they're now earning $1.2 billion per year to pay it back. And that's why it's a bit of a different type of infrastructure question than whether you're building public infrastructure, because it is a revenue generating business. And so I'm looking forward. I always hope that we can have private partners come forward on this, because that also allows.
And this is straight communism. This is communism, and it's not revenue generating as long as you have that carbon tax. This is a way to say we're running the pipeline at a loss, but we're still going to pay the carbon taxes and pay that money into federal coffers, so then we can distribute that money as we see fit.
Allows us to have the market discipline, but I'm grateful that Premier Ford is willing to look at all the options.
I just want to clarify, and then I do have a follow-up to clarify, you're open to it being paid for by taxpayer dollars?
Well, we're going to do that feasibility study, and then we'll be able to go from there. But I think it's a great investment, no matter if it's the government that will get a good ROI over a certain period of time. I always prefer looking at the private sector investing, and I think it's going to be an incredible project.
So stop asking me about it, essentially.
Yeah,
both their answers.
This is how you give away all the freedoms of all the people in each province here that are connected to these pipeline and natural resources, as well as take that money. And it's not going to be money that's going to be spent on infrastructure within Canada.
But now we'll go back into your comments and then into Alberta Personalities. Todd says, Grant Abraham can lead us into independence. And I'm also going to check out that email you sent us about Grant Abraham. Thank you so much.
We're going to start reaching out to a few people. We have to wait a couple of weeks because we, again, have a bunch of appointments. But Mitch Sylvester as well as Grant Abraham.
Yes. Lyle Norman, hello, says Doug Ford is a donkey. A giant donkey. Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I don't expect him to be in control of Ottawa by the time the feasibility study goes through.
And Tracy Freedom, hello, thank you for being here, says, but the pipeline has to go through Manitoba. Wapkinew will not let that happen. And again, they also have that mechanism of the First Nations imposing themselves upon this and for it to never actually go through.
Well, it will go through eventually. Everybody's going to get a cut. Everybody's going to get a regulation. Everybody's going to get a say. This thing is going to be an absolute shit show by the end, and it's going to usher in communism. People like Wapkinew are right in a line with Mark Carney, so he's going to be requesting mechanisms be added if the pipeline wants to go through these, and these are going to be more communist style mechanisms they're going to build in, rather than Carney asking for everything, which people are very suspicious of. He's just going to have each premier ask for this, and this, and give backdoor deals to all of them.
And First Nations, similar as to they already did during Alberta independence, and what has stalled it as of now. Todd says, funny how they're talking about pipelines now that Albertans are pushing for independence.
Exactly.
Weird. Of course. And Todd says, expensive oil pipelines, all that carbon tax and capture, too bad Canadians or Albertans won't really benefit. Well, they said they will. You said they said you will, so The Canadian government will. The Europeans probably will as well.
We also have to remember at the end of 2027 and going into 2028 is when the floodgates open to mass immigration again, even more so than they already are. Mark Carney has already built the mechanisms and said they're going to come in on that timeline. What's also scheduled for that timeline? All these pipelines. Where is he going to put all these immigrants? Where is he going to give them jobs? He's going to give them jobs within all these pipelines. That's what I'm willing to bet.
Todd says, will still be expensive under Mark and his majority. That's why he's doing it now. Even with that kind of pipeline, the price of our energy will be ridiculous. Yeah, because there's so many stuff on top of it. So many regulations and restrictions and taxes and etc.
Yeah, it's meant to be a money laundering scheme. That's why they're going to keep the carbon tax scheme in there because it's the federal government basically paying money to themselves and keeping the pipeline at a non-profitable status so the people can't demand things be built with the money from the pipeline.
Lyle Norman says, Danny is shitting on Carney with Ford now. Taking his pants off and everything, apparently. Todd says, why is your voice cracking so much, Doug? Well, he was embarrassed. He didn't want his pants to fall down and for all of us to essentially confirm what we already know. Sean says, so there is a reason they have never built a pipeline across the... Hello, Sean, by the way. Across the Canadian Shield. It's going to cost a fortune. Going to make the Alaskan pipeline look like child's play. It's if this pipeline will never happen, and not just for political reasons. It's absurd. It's far less of an environmental impact to build from the northern BC pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world's becoming more and more of a less secure place. And Canada doesn't really have a military and doesn't have a lot of security. And let's say a war does break out and Canada is the main supplier of oil to, say, to Europe or to the United States. Do you think somebody's not going to try sabotage on that pipeline? The length of that pipeline is going to be almost impossible to actually secure, especially in a place like Canada. The United States is a much different story because they have a military and they have security protocols and things when it comes to pipelines. We've seen what happened recently to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline as well.
Yes. Philip Vespa says the only deal Carney can make is with the shareholders of Brookfield. He is so pathetic and commands no respect on the world stage. Let's introduce the world's newest nation of Alberta in October.
Yeah, and a lot of his businesses are fundamentally sit on a lot of these green policies. You're like, why is he approving a pipeline? Well, let me explain it to you in maybe a different way here. Again, if he builds this pipeline, keeps the carbon tax sit on there, and even raises the carbon tax higher so the pipeline itself operates at an absolute loss, but massive amounts of carbon taxes are being paid out. Carbon taxes actually have to be spent on certain things. They're going to be spending it on green energy projects and things like that in the absolute billions, which will help him not only make his bonuses, but make Brookfield absolutely rich on green energy businesses that should be failures.
And again, with the whole green energy other money laundering scheme as well, we see other partners that he's been talking to, both in China and in India, benefit from the building and construction of a lot of the things that are needed for his green dreams.
Yeah,
like the windmills and the solar panels and everything that breaks down in 10 years and then just becomes trash. A lot of that, at least, is produced in China and India, which I'm guessing he also talked about when he went over there.
He's building a pipeline to the West Coast, and he's building a pipeline to the East Coast. He already said the East Coast oil is going to Europe. He said the West Coast pipeline oil is going to China. Those are the allies that he wants. Now, it's going to take years to build those pipelines and to actually build those relationships because people aren't going to give any favors in return until the oil starts shipping out. Those are not the kind of allies that I want. I don't not like the ideology of the European Union and Great Britain right now. They're going the opposite direction of traditional Western values. And nothing even has to be said about China. We know the direction they're already fully set in. I want to be within the shield of the Americas. Trump has already made a plan which is massively benefiting Central America and South America. Canada's really the only holdout, and it seems like they have a huge plan to develop natural resources in order to continue to be that holdout.
And Lyle Norman here with No Lies says all the federal conservatives are libtards. Yeah, they forgot what conservatism even is. Philip Vespa says Tommy the Commie replied to a person, Tommy Lukazik replied to a person outside of Alberta saying that they can donate to his third-party organization or advertising organization. Why is he allowed to break the law?
Yeah, absolutely. We brought that up about Thomas Lukazik quite a few times here on the show. But I will say another thing. I was watching a clip today, and I hope I grabbed it. I may have put it later on. It was talking about the Conservatives being a uniparty, talking about what is the one world, what is the new world order, what is this one world order? Why isn't Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives bringing these questions up in the House of Parliament over and over and over and hitting Mark Carney with it? Because it is a uniparty and they don't want those kind of questions asked, especially in a massively public way in the House of Parliament.
Essentially because they're not allowed to and they never will
want
to because they want to stay within the borders and the parameters. Todd says, so how are you a golf guy?
My mother died when I was younger, so my grandparents raised me a long time, and my grandparents freaking love golf. I mean, they would go watch golf shows. They were watching golf on TV all day, then they would go live. They had all autographed pictures. They had trophy cases. They forced me to play golf.
And?
I hated it, and I quit.
I
quit after a few months.
Were you good, though?
No, I was never good because I hated it. I absolutely hated it.
But now you said that you want to start training me in soccer because I've been saying I like soccer now a lot. You're saying now I have to go outside and kick a ball. I like watching it. I don't know if I like playing it.
Oh, I'm not trying to get you to play it. I'm just trying to get you to run with the ball a little bit.
Thanks. Sean B says, can barely hear Guy. Nat is loud and clear. I think my voice is just louder in general, no matter what we do.
Can you...
See, now he's going to think about this the whole show. What?
No, I'm not. Going to the road? No, Into the Road program?
It's going to take forever.
No, it's not.
The live producing here. Nan and the Guy.
Go into the audio?
Hold on. It's opening. Oh, no, I can't find... Oh, there we go. It's slower when we're live.
Yeah, I'm
audio.
Sure. Going to microphone 2?
You're 2?
Yeah. And then...
You look louder than me when I talk. Okay. And you're at 49. Yeah,
so click it up to just a 51 for today's show until I take all of my presets off of mine.
Okay. So let us know, who was it? Let us know, Sean, if that is better. Again, I think I just yell a lot. Rage Against Machine says, there will never be a pipeline, it's just a pipe dream. As usual, yes. Philip Espa says, what a lying snake Daniel is. The tanker ban remaining in place means there's no exportation to Asia. What happened to getting rid of the 9 bad laws, Danny? Some ultimatum that was.
No, a lot of people don't know about the tanker ban, actually. It's northern tanker ban. So going out of Vancouver, you can bring smaller tankers in there, but they're not big tankers. So it's not really cost effective for these small tankers to go over to Asia as well. But you can get oil out of the tanker ban from the West Coast because you're going to go out of the port of Vancouver. That's why Mark Carney said, oh, I'm going to reinstitute and recommit to the northern tanker ban, but we're not going to have one on Vancouver, so we can build a pipeline to Vancouver in a shallow port where big tankers can't get in or out of. And that this massively limits how much oil is going out of that West Coast pipeline permanently.
Rage Against Machine says, can't stand these fake cowboys. She's a globalist traitor to our people. Yes, get that belt buckle and hat off of your head. Kent Pengelly says, no, you're correct that historically Albertans don't show up to a referendum. The last one only had 30% and that had an election tied to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So like for the non-binding referendum, we're going to show up in mass. I would expect 90 to 95% of independent supporters to actually show up to this thing, where I'm expecting a 50%. Maybe if the Federalists get lucky, they'll get a 60% turnout. So
last few comments before we go into Alberta Personalities.
There's another thing, that soft middle, they're very likely to be the soft middle that just doesn't show up for this kind of election. So really talking a lot to the echo chamber might be fairly important, and have them aware exactly when the date is. Make sure we have mechanisms to get ride and ride sharings on that day.
Yeah. B. Karandi says, so the pipeline PSYOP has begun. How sweet. Yes. And again, we could anticipate it. We could all see it coming, essentially. And now we just have to act against it and explain exactly why this isn't a good thing, especially if you're thinking maybe that you want Alberta to be independent. Well, now is the chance to actually push for that, because we're seeing how they're building the mechanism right in front of our eyes and think we're dumb enough not to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the reason why the pipelines aren't a good idea, whether it's the West Coast pipeline or the East Coast pipeline. Number one, it's straight up communism because it's the federal government doing all the other investments. Well, it pushes the private industry out with a high carbon tax. Number two, it's a money laundering scheme because they want to keep the carbon tax in place and even raise it up and then pay that carbon taxes so the pipeline operates at a loss, but it's paying that carbon taxes to who? To itself, that it then invests into other green energy scams. And then number three, it takes sovereignty and freedom away from all the other provinces, or mainly the provinces that this pipeline is going to run through. And it's a way to build mechanisms of control over each province by having concessions made by each province that has this pipeline go through.
Sean B says, WAP canoe will shoot this down faster than a canoe full of water.
No, I think Mark Carney's going to use him to build mechanisms of communism into the pipeline, so it doesn't look like Carney's the one building those in.
Rage Against Machines says PSYOP and says they're doing a communist summer camp in Edmonton, FFS, for F's sake.
My
of course they
God.
Are. Again, they're already here and they're already going to continue pushing forward if nobody pushes back against them, even within the individual retards.
Yeah, and we do have our email in the description of the video. If you have a flyer or anything of that, or a picture or just a post of that, send it to us because we'd like to talk about it.
And Philip,
because that's absolutely ridiculous. That's the most important reason for independence. I mean, this shit's happening in Alberta. We already know the federal government is driving all of Canada directly towards communism, and now they're having summer camp for kids.
Mm-hmm. Last view, Philip Mustaquim, thank you for being here, says, we need to remove Daniel Smith. We support the party. We cannot trust the leader as they're easily bought out. Daniel Smith sounds more like a liberal. Don't worry about Nancy is another liberal. UCP is independence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm it's just going to be very interesting kind of what happens here now, because we have control over Danielle Smith. She's ousted by the UCP. We control the memberships there. We should continue to be buying memberships for that. This isn't a vote on Danielle Smith. That's all the province. It's simply the UCP. And most of the UCP is independent supporters. It's going to be interesting with these pipeline announcements. Do people actually understand what this is and how this is taking sovereignty away from Alberta and giving it to the federal government?
Sean B says, where's Canoe and Mo? MIA for now, at least.
Well, let me tell you, Canoe's not going to put a stop to this. There's going to be backroom deals made here between Carney and Canoe, not just to get the pipeline done, but to make demands on Danielle Smith and Alberta on what they want. If they want the pipeline to go through, what else are they going to have to give? The initial MOU and the initial agreement is just the initial agreement. They're going to stack mechanisms on top of there, just like they did on the last West Coast pipeline, where they put a complete halt on all construction and had to renegotiate that contract.
And lastly, Ghost of a Chance says, they spelled hardesty wrong. Yep, they're serious. Not surprising, again, from this type of Liberal government. But speaking of now, let's actually go to Alberta Personalities, and then we'll continue reading all your comments.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with this from Ellie Kinton and Tell saying, quote, Liberal lobbyists out from out east. Polyev, what the heck is he wearing? Polyev appears to take a jab at Doug Ford campaign manager, Corey.
He's ready for a Puff Daddy White party, it looks like there.
A cowboy edition. And the other pro-Doug Ford operatives who worked on the Caroline Elliott campaign.
The future Premier of British Columbia, Carrie Lynn Finlay. Way to go. Fresh off a big win against Liberal lobbyists from out east. The future Premier of British Columbia.
You might have missed that, but he was talking about Corey tonight. He understands there. Doug Ford is trying to pull off an ousting of Pierre Poilievre right now, along with his campaign manager, Corey, tonight. And this has been going on for a long time. They had hit pieces ready to run. It got exposed, so they didn't run those hit pieces, but they're looking to oust him. And I believe Danielle Smith is going to try to act like she's not choosing a side. She definitely wants wants Pierre Poilievre to be ousted by Doug Ford because that's going to allow her to play the hero and eventually oust Doug Ford himself and put her in that place. She has her sights set on Ottawa. It's just going to take a little bit of time there.
Mm-hmm. And next, JJ Nexer, speaking of Canada Day, says if Mark Carney's Canada Day speech was actually honest, every generation inherits something built by those before us. Yeah, with you, it's going to be debt poverty, record debt, woke nonsense, Islamic calls to prayer, blasting while Tim Hortons can't even
He's
hire
going to say all
Canadians
this so we can go right into the video here if you want.
Hold on. Yeah, there we go.
Every generation of Canadians.
Oh, here comes the bullshit.
Inherits something that was built by the generations before.
Yeah, with you it's going to be debt, poverty, and more debt. With a side of woke BS, Islamic call to prayers, and a Pajit Horton.
A railway, a seaway,
A Brookfield way.
a charter of rights.
No, you took that one away from us as well with Bill C-9 and Bill C-22, effectively criminalizing speech. If you so much as say anything that's hateful, you go to jail, up to life. And Bill C-22, where the government can spy on you, on your data, your metadata, and have access to your messages.
A path towards reconciliation.
I'll embark on that path to reconciliation the moment they actually dig up the bodies. You know what I'm talking about?
A country that's more prosperous, more just, more inclusive than the one they inherited from their parents.
Oof, that's going to be hard considering you put us into more than $1 trillion in debt to the point where we spend $55 billion a year just servicing the interest on the debt, both supposed to balloon to over $100 billion, more so than every other line item on our budget. Easy.
None of us builds on empty ground. We build on those platforms raised by those who came before us.
Yeah, that should have been kind of the speech. Honestly, means fuck all.
And our job, our duty even, is to raise it higher still.
If by rising higher still you mean the Brookfield share price, yes, definitely that. And housing prices, thanks to your $3.3 billion Vancouver shoebox condo bailout for your rich developer friends. Yes, those will continue to go way up.
For those who come after. This work is born from the conviction.
Okay, and you can kind of leave it there, but yeah, Mark Carney is just, in his mind, rebuilding Canada at a breakneck speed and doing absolutely fantastic. The only thing he's doing is moving it closer to communism every single day. And again, if Canada has all these pipelines built, and when they get them built, they should have no national debt. But again, this is a money laundering scheme. They're going to operate the pipelines at a loss by keeping carbon taxes not only higher than they already are, so they're paying that carbon taxes themselves to themselves, and then they never pay off any of the national debt.
But now let's continue going through your comments and then into Alberta's Canada. Sean says, Canada is just put together poorly. The shield blocks a true east to west. Well, maybe that's the whole point. Maybe that's also the whole point of why Canada is set up the way it is and why it's so essentially impossible to imagine it as a successful country. And we hear more and more that Canada might just be too big. And I do agree with both Keith Wilson and, oh God, I forgot it, Jeff Roth. Telling you, my brain is all over the place when they say that Canada might just be too big of a country to actually function, especially nowadays. But ever since the beginning, again, Alberta has been trying to get independence since the 1900s, since they essentially became Alberta. Todd says, if we get independence, when we get independence, says we're chopping down the wind farms. They're ugly AF. And they also pollute a lot, and they also only last about 8 to 10 years. And then what do you do with the waste and how do you dispose of that waste? You can't, because it's designed that way. Todd says, Danielle, another person that has sold us Albertans out. Yes. Todd says, a road mic, yep, software. And Todd says, they'll cram the St. Lawrence full of boats, but not somewhere there already is.
Well, and again, this is going to be promises where he can't actually build this pipeline until after the votes on independence because it's too big of a risk and it gives too much power to Alberta if they wind up being independent here. So number one, he's not going to be able to build these before the actual vote, or if he does, he's going to do it just before the binding referendum, which shouldn't give him a lot of leverage because nothing's actually being built yet. But number two, once he does start building it, there's going to be compromise after compromise, mechanism after mechanism as this thing's being built. Oh, we're going to halt it. You have to make some more compromises. And this is how he's going to usher communism in, demanding more and more mechanisms from different premiers from across the country.
Mm-hmm. Justin JP says, I love how Nat says, oh no. It's whenever something's going pretty bad. And I have to pretend like it's not. Todd says, no pipeline to Prince Rupert equals Alberta independence. Exactly. And no pipeline that makes sense and no pipeline that comes with all the restrictions that we already know they're gonna come with, and then they'll be able to use them as an excuse equals Alberta independence too. Sean says, sorry, Prince Rupert is a deep water port that tankers would be able to access, and that keeps getting stopped by the Liberals and First Nations, also shorter than going to Vancouver.
And you have to realize right now, what do we see? Frickin' Danielle Smith making announcements with Doug Ford, with Mark Carney, all smiles, bringing the federal government and Alberta closer and closer together. After this non-binding referendum, Danielle Smith has to go. We have to get a premier in there that's going to really put in some policies that's going to piss the federal government off so everybody doesn't look like it's buddy-buddy. We have to expose them for what they are. Stop giving remittance payments. Bring the Canadian pension plan, at least the money back, into Alberta banks. There is a ton of things we can do. Fire the RCMP, get the Alberta sheriff, and only the Alberta sheriff. There are a ton of policies that the federal government aren't going to allow to happen. Danielle Smith doesn't want to rock the boat, and that's not why she's not going to do any of these policies.
Todd says, yeah, he'll pay them to build a national pipeline. And Sean says the other pipeline across Canada will enrich the Laurentian elite and further entrench their control over Canada. Again, whole plan. And Europe as well, helping out Europe and in some ways and mechanisms, India and China too. Sean says California will have a high-speed railway before Canada does. Both are never happening, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, and why? And another thing, why do I keep bringing up the fact that the pipeline's going to operate at a loss because they're going to keep raising carbon taxes on it? Because I'm willing to bet the agreement that they have is they split the profits between Alberta and the federal government. But if there are no profits and the only profits are being actually made through the carbon tax that is being paid out to the federal government itself, paying to itself, then the federal government's the only one that makes money on this pipeline.
Rage Against Machine says, Pierre Poilievre should take up our cause and he could easily take over. But he won't because that's not part of the plan.
They're all embedded together. I mean, it's obvious at this point.
Career politicians never do what makes sense. They do what makes sense for themselves. Ghost of a Chance says, just a distraction. It will never happen. Smoke and mirrors for the gullible. And unfortunately, I do foresee there being quite a few gullible people saying, yeah, well, now why do you want independence? You've got your pipelines. Shut up.
I think he will build the pipelines out if he can win these votes and force Alberta to stay within Canada. There's just too much money to be made, and he'll control all the mechanisms in the way the money is made so it fills federal coffers, not provincial coffers. That being said, he can't deliver on any of this until after the vote. So how gullible are the people is the question, because they're really just coming out and trying to sell this thing.
Ken Pangeli says, this also isn't as simple as these politicians are making it out to be. The refineries in the east aren't able to refine heavy oil, so they would all need expansions. I don't think this will happen. Again, it's one reason after the other where we all kind of know already that it's not going to happen. Ghost of a Chance says, or it might happen, but not to benefit those that they're saying it's going to benefit. Ghost of a Chance says feasibility study will come in around 2035, and then they'll say, oh, but we did it.
The feasibility study alone is going to be a money laundering scheme. The amount they're going to spend on that thing, probably a couple $100 million.
Casey Willis says, reptiles must be making all these decisions behind the scenes. Yeah, have you seen them? Have you seen Mark Carney's wife? Rage Against Machine says, who would invest in this BS system?
The Canadian federal government. Private industry is not going to invest in this.
Themselves. And yet, private industry has already come out to say if Alberta was able to do and help us out with pipelines, with oil, without the restrictions imposed by the Canadian federal government, then we'd love to continue to trade with them, just with Alberta.
Yeah, but
they've already said
it. The federal government wants to make sure it owns all the mechanisms of control. Period. If it operates these pipelines at a loss and not a gain, and the only profit being made is through carbon taxes, then no province that this pipeline goes through is going to make any money off of it.
And lastly, Philip Vespa says, pipelines are a great investment, not when they're built in Canada, because they purposefully do so. So they cannot be a good investment for people that actually want to make real money.
Yeah, let's go into
Canada.
Alberta's Canada here.
That was a big glitchy, apologies, but let's start with CTV News says Canada chooses German company to build new submarine fleet.
And yeah, again, all this stuff should have been put on the table, and it still should be being put on the table. There's all kinds of contracts Canada is giving to different European countries, different Asian countries. This should all be going to the U.S., but it should be used as negotiated leverage and all be putting on the table as one big deal to renew the USMCA. Instead, Canada didn't even show up to the talks half the time, and now they're doing everything they can to absolutely sabotage this deal.
I swear, a first year in Econ 101 teenager could figure out that this isn't a good idea and it's not the best way to invest money and now to do things properly or trade. CBC Watcher says Toronto's Taylor Swift. Speaking of Taylor Swift, Toronto's Taylor Swift Eras Tour delivered $282 million in economic impact for just $3.6 million in city costs, with $8 million back in revenue. The CBC notes it outperformed the economic lift from the World Cup Games, which are already on track to cost taxpayers $380 million, and we all know how those numbers trend upward. Also, just as a small aside on Taylor Swift, did you see her giant hypocrisy this weekend where she literally sent all her fans waiting outside the Met Stadium where she was getting married for show, essentially, cake. So she literally did the whole let them eat cake thing when she sent her wet fans outside because it was raining, cake, leftover cake too. Sorry, I had to point that out as well. One pop star weekend versus 6 soccer matches, and where are the priorities? Well, we also know that Canada was not going to be a good host because it's not what they paint to the outside world, the real picture inside of Canada.
Well, and again, a lot of this was money laundering schemes because I was looking at a lot of the breakdown for Canada, and their costs were way over a lot of the other countries there. I mean, this was a net loss. They didn't get a good rub from this, not on social media, not on mainstream media either.
Well, Toronto and Vancouver have wrapped up their hosting duties for the World Cup, and now the question on many people's minds, was it worth it? Well, Marianne's been looking at some of the economic numbers coming in for Toronto. So, Marianne, what do they tell us?
Well, you know, there is no denying that it unified the country. Everyone was really excited. But when we look at the dollars and the sense of it all, maybe not the economic impact that people were expecting. Let's take a look at the Toronto numbers right now, because it really does paint the picture. Now that there are no more Toronto games. This is from Moneris, which is a payment processing company, looking at spending in Toronto, and you can see $380 million is the cost to host the 6 games. But when you look at the data for spending between June 12th and 26th, debit and credit card spending went up by 3% at restaurants and bars compared to the same time last year, and then a 34% increase when it comes to spending from international visitors. So you may be asking yourself, okay, well, that's up. Up is better than down or in the negative. But looking at the Eras Tour, which is when Taylor Swift was here in the city in 2024, there was an even bigger economic impact. So that's for the concert. And not everyone is a Taylor Swift fan in the same way that not everyone is a soccer fan. But when you consider the investment leading into the World Cup and how much Taylor Swift
leave
brought
that there.
into
And the thing is, with a concert like Taylor, I'm not a Taylor Swift fan in any way, shape, or form. But with a concert like Taylor Swift, she has to... she and the record label have to shoulder all that cost burden for security and everything. So, I don't think it was worth it for Canada to have FIFA there. Now, for the United States and Mexico, things turned out a lot different. Yeah. They got a really good rub off of this thing. There's going to be add-on effects for years to come.
We continue to have soccer fans today even thanking Mexicans and thanking Mexico fans because we thanked them for the game that we had. And they were also having a lot of fun before the game, after the game, etc. And they were all saying, also for Mexico, everything that the media has been telling us that Mexico City is so dangerous, which, I mean, it's not dangerous, but it's not as exaggerated as they were making it out to be, is a complete lie. And even journalists from the BBC itself saying, oh, Mexico City is so lovely. It's not at all what it was painted as. The elevation didn't even affect their players that much. So again, for Canada, most of the stories on social media we were seeing, it was people complaining everything was too expensive, hence why they weren't the international visitors. When they got there, they were like, oh, it's actually this expensive to buy anything here.
I think it's less about the negative stories about Canada and why did the United States and Mexico have such good stories. All the stories revolved around the same thing, and that was the culture of Mexico or the culture of Texas, the culture of the Midwest in the United States. It all, when a country got a good rub, it was because of their cultures and their fundamental principles. Canada no longer has that. They're just a homogenous kind of blob there, and they don't have anything that they're really selling to the people that are going to FIFA. It's like, what are we going to, an Indian soccer game here?
But also from the people themselves. Again, Mexicans, we might hate our government. We might sometimes hate each other and the types of crime we have. But in the end, especially around football and soccer, we are very united, and we do like to be good hosts and to celebrate other people as well coming by showing them our culture that we still know about and we still remember. And very similar to the Midwest, to Texas and other parts of the US, they still have that very entrenched culture that hasn't been taken away fully, at least, by the multiculturalism story and we're a post-national state, which is what Trudeau says.
And this is the thing, like...
And we love, for example, here in Mexico, we love to show people our stuff. We love to show people our pyramids and our trajineras and our tacos and our this and our that, the beer. Same as in Texas. I mean, a lot of the people saying...
Well, let's think about this for a second, Nat. I mean, just think about it. Canada has no culture. There's one place in Canada that has culture at this point. That's Alberta. Now, I understand the stampede was there, but they should have scheduled FIFA to go into Alberta at the exact same time. It's one place that would have had culture, and it could have shared that with the world. Instead, you put it in Toronto and Vancouver. These two cities, I understand they're the biggest cities in Canada. They have no culture of their own. They have no real culture. Alberta does. Alberta would have been the perfect place to actually... FIFA. If FIFA ever comes back, it needs to be in Alberta because Alberta has something to share with the world, which the rest of Canada does not.
Yep. I don't think FIFA's coming back to Canada anytime soon. Mexico, maybe. The US, for sure. We already know that there's one happening not that far from now. Why can't I talk? I ran out of breath there. J-Gen Xer says, Liberals defeated the motion to stop non-citizens convicted of serious crimes from making refugee claims, while crime and extortion keep rising across Canada.
Yeah, and this is ridiculous. And he does say here, this was the one motion that we were hoping Liberals would work together with us. We want to work with Liberals. Now, I don't think that's the case.
You can't.
I don't think they want to work together, but anything when it comes to mass immigration or immigration, they're not going to take one step back. Now, in the public eye, once in a while, they'll take a different tone, but when it comes to their actual voting, they're not going to take a step back. And at the end of 2027 and 2028, the floodgates are going to be held wide open. They're trying to wait Trump out right now.
The Liberals have defeated our motion to stop non-citizens convicted of serious crimes from making refugee claims. While crime and extortion rises in Canada, the Liberals continue to protect convicted criminals. This is the motion that we hope that the Liberals would support us on. In times where they're calling for collaboration, we too are also calling for collaboration to support certain motions and bills that Canadians really want. Tough day today. The Liberals have...
But also, to all the conservatives, what did you expect? They have a majority. They've been saying they don't want to actually cooperate with you, and they continue to, even the most common sense, plain language, simple bills that the Conservatives have proposed, that a lot of Liberal voters would also like, will get voted down because they have that power mechanism now, and you essentially let them get that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you expect? We hope that they actually agree with us. Well, you can't hope. There's no hope right now.
Okay, let's go into the next section. And I actually have...
Comments?
Oh, maybe I should bring this up now before I forget it. It kind of maybe relates to the first story in the next section. It's kind of back to that pipeline. But the Strait of Hormuz in Iran, it looks like there's going to be a toll charged by Iran. And all these Western countries like Europe are absolutely complaining about it because it's going to raise oil prices and things like that. What's Iran saying the toll is for? They're saying it's for environmental purposes. It sounds like nothing different than a carbon tax from Canada. I mean, if they want to complain about Iran having a carbon tax, obviously it's not for a carbon tax. But why is it okay when Canada does it, but not okay when Iran does it? There should be no carbon taxes across the board, or environmental tax across the board.
Excuses tax. Let's just call it that.
Oh, money laundering tax.
Yes. But now, do you want me to go comments or?
Yeah, go comments.
Go to comments. Sorry. Where are we?
I like to speak broken English now.
Todd says, Todd says membership parties with a laptop open to a UCP website. Good. And Sean says, Carney speaks for the MMWG, 2SLGBTQQIIAA+ alphabet soup community.
Absolutely. And we need to continue to be buying up UCP memberships. Once we win this non-binding referendum, we need to oust Danielle Smith. It's obvious after today's press conference, she has to go. We can't have somebody playing this buddy-buddy with the federal government, giving away our freedoms on a daily basis, signing them away through MOUs and calling it good for you. Eat your porridge, it's good for you, and it's poison porridge.
Sean says, the pipeline across Canada reminds me of a Soviet plan. It's going to be far too expensive to ever make it viable, but it will put union labor lots of jobs to fund the Liberal campaign coffers.
Yeah, and I don't even know. Like, I understand. Yeah, it will. hire unions, but I'm sure they're going to have all kinds of things for mass immigrants to get all these jobs.
Sean says, Nat, stop pretending you didn't go to Taylor Swift's wedding. I wouldn't even say I wish, because I wouldn't want to be around those people. Ew. Sean says, hold on. World Cup has been successful in the US.
The funny thing was, I didn't even know she was freaking getting married. And then the day of it, it popped up on my feed, but I didn't get that much coverage.
It did in certain circles.
Oh, it did?
Especially
Okay.
if you're a girl. Which I did not want to see.
In your circle.
Well, and now I've kind of switched my algorithm almost completely and fully to the World Cup and to soccer. Politics here and there, at least for my personal account, but soon it'll have to go back to full politics. Sean says, World Cup has been successful in the USA, but this is like the Olympics. It's not about money, but marketing your country to the world, and Canada failed in that department. Although they've been trying and spending so much money to tell the rest of the world that they're so much better than the USA, and yet when people actually went there and had to live through it and live through Toronto and Vancouver, they didn't find that to be true at all.
Yeah.
Pure marketing propaganda.
Well, and another thing here, these federalization of natural resources through these pipelines and things, if you trust the government, I guess federalization is a good thing. So a lot of people may start voting for Carney. The problem is I absolutely do have zero trust for the Canadian government.
If anybody cares, USA, Belgium are 1-1. USA was down until now. They got a penalty kick. Sean says, which I don't think penalty kicks are actually goals. Sean says, Guy, I disagree. Quebec has culture too. But do we like that culture?
Actually, he's absolutely right. And I might not be a big fan of Quebec culture, but I completely forgot about Quebec. If they would have had this World Cup in Quebec, Montreal, and then Alberta, it would have been a win, I think, for Canada. They could have pitched a unique Canadian culture to the people, because those are the two places, and those are the two places that actually want independence as well.
And they're contrasting too, but specifically, I'm guessing because of that, they're more.
I mean, I think that would have actually been a huge win for Canada, because, like you said, those cultures are absolutely contrasting.
Mm-hmm. I think I pressed something. No, I didn't. Okay.
But instead, you pick the two cities that have zero culture.
Suck, where everybody hates it, and everybody hates each other within those cities too. Believe me, I lived in Vancouver.
Well, and then at the same time, like Quebec would have been fantastic because the French culture, this and that, the food, stuff like that, the nightlife's big there. If it would have came to Alberta, you would have had the damn stampede going on at the same freaking time. That would have been magical.
Which we saw a lot of people, especially the Europeans, loving the Texas culture and loving going to rodeos and doing the little mechanic bull stuff and the little hat stuff and the.
But that would have connected.
Roughnecking
that would have connected Canada much too much to Donald Trump in the United States. Carney would have hated that. So.
Philip Mustaquim says, when we get a majority vote, they will know the UCP is an independent party. We need to get rid of the DS, the Danielle Smith noise.
100%. If you don't know it after today's press conference and what she's doing, what I've been saying with the federalization of natural resources, helping Carney go head first into communism and taking your freedoms, if you don't see it now, you're never going to see it. It is absolutely time to get rid of Danielle Smith after that October 19th non-binding referendum.
And hold on. Ghost of a Chance says, a pipeline literally almost has zero environmental impact because it is underground. The Alto Overland high-speed rail project is an ecological nightmare. Here in Mexico, we just suffered through that. We just destroyed a bunch of the portions of their biggest and most important selva. What do you call a selva? A tropical forest down south by the Mayan Riviera, because our older and current President Sheinbaum and President AMLO, for some reason, communists love building trains. I don't know what it is about trains.
Because money disappears in the money laundering scheme.
And that's what happened here. And that's what's happening in California, and that's what's going to happen in Canada.
Yeah, reread that comment for a second.
A pipeline literally has zero environmental impact.
Okay, yeah, leave it there. It has zero environmental impact. Yeah, I agree. It should have zero environmental impact. I worked on the Trans Mountain Pipeline that went from Alberta to British Columbia, and the amount of safety meetings I had to go through, environmental meetings on a weekly freaking basis. You would think you're just absolutely destroying the world. The amount of times we had to freeze construction on that pipeline, or nobody shows up to work that day because it's a stop work order or whatever it was. It was absolutely insane. I mean, and then it's a way for everybody to get their hand into the pie.
Hold on. Philip Mustaquim says, we need Mitch Sylvester speaking as a temporary leader of the UCP. Well, kind of already is.
Well, he's the one that's been pulling off this absolutely masterful plan. We already have 60% of the memberships. It might be up to 70%. We should be able to get up to 80 if Mitch just keeps on the track he's on. So
Philip Espa says it's a loan on Albertan taxpayers that has to be paid back with fiscal interest, also known as carbon taxes. If they only
but they're not going to pay it back. No. They're going to agree to pay it back with profits. They're going to operate the pipeline at a nonprofit status because the carbon taxes have to be paid, and that carbon taxes doesn't go to the Albertan government, but it goes to the federal government. I'm guessing.
Kutcher said, I'm going to say this about Doug Ford. Fact 1, he intentionally sabotaged trade agreements. Fact 2, yeah, he did. Fact 2, he threatens to cut off power to the United States, which is considered an act of war, which we talked about last week. And it's a direct attack on citizens of the United States to cut off their power. And he was already called out on that in the past. And then he backtracks, as he always does. Takes him a while because of the mass he has. And lastly says Doug Ford does not have good intentions for the rest of Canada. His intentions are for his personal gain. Again, career politicians, all their intentions are for their own personal gain.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Doug Ford realizes his poll numbers are dropping right now. He doesn't have a lot of support. He doesn't want to go into another election. This is why he wants to oust Pierre Poilievre and take that position. He wants to secure his job as the federal opposition. And he's got a lot of support for that. Mark Carney's going to support him. Jason Kenney's going to support him. Then a lot of the people behind the scenes in the Conservative Party are actually supporting him, including his campaign manager. Danielle Smith is definitely going to support him because she wants to be the one that ends up ousting him and taking that position. So she's looking 4 or 5 moves ahead because she has her sights set on Ottawa as well. The knives are definitely out for Pierre Poilievre right now, and I think all roads kind of run through Doug Ford right now, and he knows the clock's ticking on him. So he has to make a move on Poilievre now before the next election because there's a chance he doesn't win the next election.
The Mustaquims asks, Nat and Guy, where are your cowboy hats? Straw hats are cooler, lots found in Mexico. You have a straw hat.
No, mine.
A friend brought it to you from Panama, I think.
Oh, yeah, I do have a straw hat.
Or in Ecuador. Yeah, but it got kind of misshapen, and we can't shape it back because you need heat, and it's a whole process to do. But I really do want a pink cowboy hat that fits me, and pink boots.
I got some.
Or white boots.
I have some gunslinger hat type things.
Yeah. But they also got misshapen.
No, they're not that. They're good. Yeah, I have them on. We have another set that is a single set that we're not using right now because we need a desk for it. But the hats are in the background.
They're there. Yeah. Phil Mustaquim also says, "Let's give Daniel Smith the cowboy boot." Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when you talk about cowboy boots because I always think when I think of Danielle Smith and cowboy boots, her buying that pair of boots for David Eby and how good friends they are and how good friends her and Doug Ford are. And it's just absolutely sickening to me right now the way Danielle Smith is trying to pitch all this to Albertans.
No spine, no backbone, but listen to her because she's the future of Alberta, of a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada.
Yeah.
Terry Labiage says Republic of Alberta now, and yes, especially if you want to avoid all of this mayhem we continue to talk about and the continuous path towards communism, you have that opportunity to vote out of it. But
they're really laying a lot more chips on the table than I thought. They're really trying to win this non-binding referendum. I thought they were going to save a lot of these chips for the binding referendum. But with an announcement of a pipeline going to the East Coast, the West Coast, now there's probably going to be mining contracts coming out. There has to be a series of other contracts because we're still quite a bit of a ways out. It's just very interesting. They're putting so much on the table right now. It's just a shame that there's all these strings attached to all of these things. These could be good things if they didn't have so many strings attached.
And lastly, Rage Against Machine says, it's a quote, quote, "The free man is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who cannot be purchased." I like that one. I shout pretty loudly when I get emphatic. But speaking of, let's now go to Alberta and the world. Yeah, Alberta and the world. I have to figure out how to make those not glitchy. We're going to change them anyways, but apologies for the glitchiness. But let's start with CBC Watcher again, saying Daniel Smith is, as the Carney pipeline project has no customers signed up, isn't it obvious that no one in the industry actually believes that this is going to be built? Certainly not enough to put their own money into it. And she says, well, thanks for the nice neutral question.
Well, and you have to realize what they're saying. There's no customers, there's no investors, number one, and that's what makes this a communist pipeline and communist natural resource sector in Canada. But where are the customers going to come from? Because on a global stage, you can't sell your oil for $15 more a barrel. Who's going to buy that? So they're going to have to sell it at a discount, but they're still going to pay the carbon taxes, which will operate the pipeline at a net loss, but it will funnel money into the federal coffers through a money laundering scheme through carbon taxes.
Funny.
Let's keep going.
Let's play the clip.
Angelica Toy with Rebel News. Premier Smith, the South Bow pipeline to the U.S. is fully subscribed. It has signed contracts with so many oil producers. It will be full for the next 20 years. The Carney pipeline project has no customers signed up.
Pause it. And she just thinks she's hot shit right now. Oh, I'm announcing this pipeline to the East Coast, to the West Coast. Nobody understands what's going on. She thought when she announced those 9 other questions that we're going to muddy the waters with the non-binding referendum, nobody would notice. We noticed within hours. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just hoping people open their eyes and notice what's going on here.
Isn't it obvious that no one in the industry actually believes this is going to be built? Certainly not enough to put their own money into it.
Well, thanks for the nice neutral question. I would say it's a bit premature to make that point. I think that what we've done with our West Coast pipeline is announced an intention for the federal and provincial government to work together. We've got a private proponent. We have to make sure that we can get all of the Indigenous consultation and ownership stake, make sure that we do the environmental approvals. And I have absolute confidence with the conversations that we've been having with the Pathways Group that we will get those commitments. Remember, you can start a pipeline with a smaller amount going through it, and then you can do compression, just like we're seeing with the Trans Mountain pipeline. They began with a little bit of a smaller volume, but they're also increasing now up to 300,000 barrels. I think it's our job to make sure that we can expand the industry by 2 million barrels. So not only can we fill the South Bow line, we can fill the West Coast line, we can fill our new northern, what are we calling yours? Northern Shield, our new Northern Shield pipeline, and also be able to serve north, south, east, west. I mean, this is the whole point of what we were trying to do in building out economic corridor. So I think it's a great project. We have to remember a few years ago, we were talking about projects in all direction. We were talking about Northern Gateway, Keystone, and Energy East, and for various reasons for each of them, because of regulatory uncertainty or because of permits being canceled, they ended up all stalling. So this is resurrecting all 3 of those concepts, perhaps on different corridors with some different partners. But I feel like the industry was there 10 years ago. They can
and I'll be very interesting, what's in these contracts, who determines how much oil is going out? Because if it's operating at a loss because they're adding carbon taxes and they're having to sell at price per barrel as every other country on the world stage, who's going to determine it? I'm willing to bet it's going to be the federal government, and they're going to say pump more oil out, and we're going to have more carbon taxes, and we're going to operate at more of a loss. If it's operating at a loss or neutral, you should be able to turn the pipeline off at a certain point. Federal government's not going to allow that to happen, so you better believe they're going to build the mechanisms in that they control how much oil is going through there.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying, of course, it was Rebel News, asking the hard questions, holding government to account. Good for them. Yeah. No, thanks for answering the question. It's because she knows she can't fully answer it, and because the answer will not benefit them trying to gaslight people with this new plan of, new pipeline.
She wants to, this is a foo-foo pipeline. Oh, fantastic. Let's just focus on all the good things, not the communism that this is ushering in, not the freedoms that this is taking, not how they're going to still pay carbon taxes and operate this pipeline at a net loss. Mm-hmm. There are so many things that they don't want to address here, and they're so obvious.
Well, this is sad for the U.S. They were down 2-1. Belgium's winning. Okay. Speaking of the U.S., Global News says, quote, Carney to travel to Turkey, where NATO allies will focus on managing Trump.
Yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous. And this is going to go hand in hand with the next story. We'll see how they manage Trump in just a moment. He went down there and laid down the law. They're trying to wait Trump out. They're trying to finance globalism through Canada, through Mark Carney, through natural resources. And they're leaning into it, building the mechanisms. And Mark Carney is making sure that he's going to finance globalism, and they're making a hard turn towards communism with this financing.
Let's see what Trump said. Marian Offel says, Trump told NATO allies in Turkey that America has dropped nearly $1 trillion on the alliance. He warned no more free rides or leave NATO. They were not there for us because they never are.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's talking about possibly pulling out of NATO. And this would be Europe wants to go headfirst into World War III. Even with these natural resource projects, they're not going to be up and running for another 5 to 10 years, depending on the size of the project here that Canada is approving. There's no way they have a way to finance a World War III without the United States. That's why I think they're going to put everything they have into these midterms and the 2028 election. Trump is doing an absolutely masterful job. Now, I'm not going to say I agree with him on absolutely everything, but on a global stage, man, my jaw is dropped on a daily basis on the things that he is doing and how globalism is in full-on retreat here.
Where he's expected to encourage allies to step up their support to end the conflict with Iran. Alex Hogan joins us from the White House with the details. Alex.
Hi, Brian. Yes, as you mentioned, President Trump is expected to leave the White House this evening for Turkey for the NATO summit. He's expected to meet with the president of Turkey, Erdogan, as well as other NATO leaders, and he will hold a press conference at the end of this trip. A senior U.S. official says ahead of this meeting that this is going to be a posture review, shifting the burden of Europe's defense to Europe. And President Trump blasted the alliance again online, writing, quote, ridiculous for the USA to continue along this one-sided path when the relationship is not reciprocal. They were not there for us. And last month, he told NATO Secretary General the issue isn't finances alone.
Where he's expected to encourage allies
Yeah, and
to
this
step
is
up.
he's absolutely right here, and this is one of the big benefits to what happened in Iran. He was able to ask for help. They all said no, 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 and now he can say, well, we were there for you with Ukraine and Russia, but you're not here for us when we're asking for your help. Now he actually has the mechanism and the reason to pull out of NATO if he wants. And I'm all for pulling out of NATO, and this would be one of the big benefits of Alberta getting its independence. It automatically be pulled out of NATO. Danielle Smith was saying in one of her press conferences, well, if Alberta does end up getting its independence, it's going to cost a lot of money because it's going to have to get back into NATO and the UN and all the. No, it does not. Absolutely not. It wants a direct partnership with the United States and other countries that are aligned with it. But it wants direct partnerships, not with NGOs, but with countries themselves. And this is what Trump's big plan is as well. He wants direct relationships with countries, not three-letter agencies.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, some states in the U.S. are still slightly more insane than others. Wall Street says a mother in Oregon, Sean, is told she can no longer have access to her child patient portal, saying, I just got done taking my son to the doctor, and they tried telling me at the front desk that I don't have access to his patient portal anymore because he turned 13. Are you kidding me? He's under the age of 18. He is my child. I should have access to what his medical stuff is. That is insane.
Parental rights are disappearing, and they're bringing in, I'm sure in Canada, they're going to want to bring in a MAID program for younger and younger people. What happens if the parents have no say in those medical decisions? Why don't you go back up and read what happened at what happens at each age in Oregon? Yes.
Well, usually you don't like me to read, so I didn't. Says this is real because Democrats are trying to twine away parents' rights from their own kids. Here's what happens at age 13 in Oregon. Oregon minor consent laws kick in, similar to the ones Canada has. Minors gain rights to confidential care in certain areas without parental knowledge or consent. At age 14 plus, they can consent to outpatient mental health, drug, and alcohol treatment. At age 15, they can consent to general medical, hospital, dental, and surgical care. And at any age, they have full confidentiality for reproductive health, birth control, STIs, HIV testing and treatment. Systems like MyChart and Epic often default to restricting or segmenting parental proxy access starting at age 13.
Okay, we can play the clip here, but this is ridiculous. We need more parental rights, not less parental rights.
And in Canada now, you have way less parental rights as well.
I just got done taking my son to the doctor, and they tried telling me at the front desk that I don't have access to his patient portal anymore because he just turned 13. Are you kidding me? He is under the age of 18. He is my child. I should have access to what his medical stuff is. That is insane to me.
So the reason that this mother is locked out of her own kids' medical records is because of Democrats. Democrats passed what's called minor consent laws, and they kick in at age 13 in Oregon. So at age 13, minors gain the right to confidential care in certain areas without parental knowledge or consent. So here are those ages. At age 14...
And what I will ask, which is the exact same thing Billboard Chris asks, is if a child can consent without their parent be parenting, right, having their parental rights, well then what else, if not just medical, can children then be coerced or pushed into or told that they can consent to themselves without consulting their parents without their parents being informed.
Yeah, this is how you get this idea of maps, because children can consent, no children cannot consent. And this is absolutely ridiculous. And this is a slippery slope. And my advice to a lot of people that live in Oregon or Washington State in the United States or even Canada, vote with your feet, because not all states are the same, just like not all provinces are the same. At a certain point, if Alberta doesn't get its independence, a lot of people will be voting with their feet, I believe, as well.
Yes, my shoe just fell off. Speaking of it, do we want to continue playing it or no?
No, that's good. Okay. We can go into comments and then
Are you and BLE?
BLE.
Yes. Okay, back into comments. Hold on. Where were we? Sean says, Guy is right, much better in Montreal. Toronto is just an international blah city with no character. And says also Vancouver, BC is beautiful, setting like Portland or Seattle. I don't know about that anymore. But Cascadia is self-destructing on the ground, filled with homeless substance addicts and the mentally ill. Yes, but again, it's intentional. And I think just the feeling and the vibe of the city itself, I hate using that word, makes it way uglier and uglier as each day passes. Sean says, also seeing Pierre Poilievre in that costume was funny, reminds me of another Canadian, Michael J. Fox's outfit in Back to the Future 3.
Well, yeah, and I will say Vancouver, not disagree. I think Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities in Canada. The problem is it has, number one, absolutely has no culture to sell to tourists when it comes out there. But number two, the amount of drug addicts on the street, open air drug use, and politics destroy that city.
And mismanagement.
Yeah.
Sean says, you can't just build a pipeline halfway across the Canadian Shield, Danny. Nope.
Well, they're going to promise they are, though.
Yes. And Sean also says, I still don't think geographically Alberta can join NATO, but it wouldn't matter with an alliance with the USA. It's better to be outside the NATO bureaucracy. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Again, why would they want to...
You absolutely have to understand what's happening now. Trump has the globalists in full-on retreat. Europe has lost all their manufacturing. They have no real natural resources and an abundance where they can become a world power or anything like that. They're looking to Canada. They will build a pipeline and other natural resource contracts in order to save Europe and to save globalism. That's what they want to do with Canadian natural resources. It's a desperate move, and I think that's what they want to do overall. We need to say no. We need to help Trump push back on globalism here through this communist pipeline and this communist natural resource development that Carney's trying to do here.
Yeah. Philip Espa says the Conservative Party are weak and full of a bunch of losers. If they keep Alberta prisoner in Canada, I will never vote for them again. Hope Albertans do the same. These those that do value true independence and the true values that they purport to have, but they actually don't have in the Conservative Party and haven't had for a while, I would say.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see Poilievre in Alberta, to see Doug Ford in Alberta, and to see everybody trying to be on the same hug. Let's hug Alberta. Mm-hmm. Let's give Alberta the group hug. You're trying to. They're trying to hug you right into a communist jail here.
Mm-hmm. Hug you into compliance. And thank you so much, Todd, for the $5 super chat saying thank you, Nat and the guy. Thank you. And I can't wait to see all the new videos you come up with once you start using the equipment as well. And hopefully the suggestions we gave work.
Yeah. And
thank you so much.
On tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Tuesday? Tomorrow's show, I'll show you how to mount a battery pack to that cage that I showed the other day.
Southern Gen Phil, hello, says Canada believes its own lies now. Trump's USA rocks.
Yeah.
And we also saw it, funnily enough, with the 4th of July celebrations.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people in the going for soccer also saw that. I mean, there are still the cities, there are still the problems, there are still the teen takeover issues, and I think it's just people finally realizing that being more heavy-handed with what's going on is actually working and helping.
Yeah.
And Sean, thank you so much for the $1.99 super chat saying nice show today. Thank you. Nice comments today.
Yeah, sorry if I was really repetitive, but what's going on with this pipeline and the communist takeover of Canada through natural resource and natural resource development and stripping freedoms, I feel like I just absolutely am going to have to repeat over and over and over. We're going to have to drill it into people's minds because they're going to sell these natural resource projects as a way to absolutely kill independence in a non-binding referendum before we even get to a binding referendum. This is our biggest threat. We need to make sure people understand they are selling out their long-term future for these natural resource projects. Alberta does not have control and sovereignty over these projects. The federal government does. We would be better off building a direct pipeline to the United States and selling that oil at a discount. Selling that oil at a discount would still be profitable, especially if there was no carbon tax involved in it, because the federal government could kick rocks and be cut right out of the deal.
Rage Against Machine says, basically nationalizing pipelines. And yes, what we've been saying for the past who knows how long.
Nationalizing pipelines, but also ushering communism on the back of it.
Yes. Rage Against Machine says, smoke and mirrors. Exactly. And Krisha says, how do you strip rights away from parents and give them to kids when their brain isn't fully developed until their early 20s? Yeah, some until they're 25. Some, they just never develop.
They
don't know the right or wrong, and they have to be taught it. Exactly.
Can't get cigarettes or alcohol, but you can cut your woo-woo off. Like
some of them can.
Yeah, absolutely insane policies Canada has. And a lot of countries went down that path, but Carney's not backing down. We see his kid.
And the U.S. in certain states as well. Rage Against the Machine says, thank you all for being here. Yes, thank you all for being here. And if you haven't done so, please hit that like button because, again, it really does help us out. Oh, no, RUMBLE, you did have comments and I didn't read them. I'll read some of them here on YouTube real quick, and then we'll go into RUMBLE.
No, let's go over to RUMB and then we'll read them over
I'll say
there.
hello, KB, for you, just for now. But now we're heading over to RUMBLE. There will be a 30-second wait screen. Have a great start to your week if you're not joining us over on RUMBLE. But before you go, please don't forget to subscribe because, again, it really does help us out. We'll see you in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
No, I'm coming back because the super chat came in. Rage Against the Machine says, and it's a nice quote, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying, he who trades truth for comfort will soon find he has neither. Exactly, and I really actually do hope a bunch of conservatives do realize that.
Well, and the conservatives are really running a uniparty game, and people need to wake up to this. And it's becoming very obvious through Alberta independence what's been going on in Canada for a long time. Pierre Poilievre was a very slick operator, making it look like he's something different. But behind the scenes, he wants that same federalization of those natural resources.
And Sean says, no, hold on. What am I holding on for, Sean? Should I wait?
No, that's good.
But Sean says, no, hold on.
He'll come over to RUMBLE.
But if he super chats, I want to read it here. Okay, fine. Blame the guy if we can't read your super chat here on YouTube. But thank you so much, everybody. Okay, now we are heading over to RUMBLE. I'm still trying to hold on as much as I can.
Let's go over to RUMBLE.
Tapping on the table. Okay. Sorry, Sean. We'll see you over at RUMBLE.
Let's get ready to rumble!
We're back, Sean.
I
was able to convince him to wait.
I think he's already gone to probably RUMBLE.
I don't know. I don't see him. He did say hold on for the super chat.
Well, eventually, we're not going to have any wait screen, and then we're just going to go over to Rumble.
No, we will have a wait screen.
I logged out of YouTube myself.
I haven't.
Let me go
We're
back. How many people are still
just keep coming back. There's still 30 on YouTube.
Oh, there is.
Hello, YouTube. Again.
Okay, well, let's just go.
No, I'm holding on for Sean. He keeps saying, hold on.
Okay.
I like to respect Sean.
Well, why don't we go into the first story that we were going to do on
Because we can't do it on YouTube.
Yeah, we can. For the first one's fine.
Okay, fine. We'll go to the first YouTube story, RUMBLE story while we wait for Sean. Let's start with Berta Proud Dad says, quote, they told Canadians to be inclusive, kind, and respectful to everyone else's traditions and values. Fair, but when do our traditions, values, and way of life get the same respect back?
Oh, yeah, it probably was best on, but we'll just play it here.
Never, because that's the whole point.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is a woman shitting in a park. That is where parents take their kids to go play at the park. That's where people go for jogs and strolls. And the amount of people that are defending this action is actually quite concerning. This isn't a one-off incident of somebody shitting in public in Canada that came from another country. And it's not only that, we have people that are shooting firearms in the air, with no respect for safety whatsoever, as well as just throwing their garbage into ditches. When we say import third world, become third world, we're not being racist. That's facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've covered most of if not all of those stories that he's talking about. And the Canadian passport is becoming weaker and weaker. A lot of countries, especially in Asia, are saying too many tourists are pooping on the beach that are coming from Canada. And those aren't traditional Canadian citizens, but the traditional Canadian citizens are having a weakened passport.
Mm-hmm. Sean, thank you for the 199 super chat. Says, I went to Rumble too.
That's what I thought.
Sorry. Okay, now, says that looks like Oregon. And interestingly enough, most of the issues do come from certain sectors of where the people are coming from. But now let's actually go to our
let's read the other comments now.
Okay. Todd says, no doing your business in the park unless it's the outhouse. Exactly. And Todd also says, this is funny AF. Jesse GP says, hurry up, Sean. We need to be good neighbors. Put it to 100 kilometers an hour. Stop sleeping at the wheel.
Okay, let's go over to Rumble
Yes, now we're going over to our UMBLE.